First of all, the subject today is, I've got two photographs here, two girls sitting by the sea painting in Italy, and these photographs were taken by me last year, but I'm going to come back to that in a moment. So that's the subject. Just a word on materials, if I can move these out of the way for a moment. The paper I'm using is Arches 300 grams or 140 pounds, not surface, not is the surface. But the important thing is that it's a cotton rag content paper. It's absorbent. It's a good quality paper. I'll be showing you some drawings and paintings in a moment, which are not done on that. But for this purpose, I think it's a good idea if you could have yourself some good quality paper like that. I'm using the paints that you can see here. Let me see if I can get them all in. I think they're all in there. I will talk about these as the next couple of hours go on. I'll talk about these, and especially when I'm using them. So rather than just run through them, I'll do that as we're working through our paintings. And in any case, on Lois's information she put out to you, there is a photograph of these, and all the colors are named, but we'll come back to that in a moment. And these are the brushes that I'm going to be using. Two mop brushes here, the so-called because they pick up and hold a lot of water, but they can also do all sorts of interesting things by going to points. I'm going to use, and put those to one side, and then I'm going to use a rigger brush here, which is just a cheapy thin synthetic brush here. The reason it's got a bend in it is because it got stuffed in my suitcase coming back from Barbados, and it's bent, but it's just fine. And then I'm probably going to use this brush, which is known as a dagger, and I will talk about all the brushes as I come to them, as we use them in the paintings. And lastly, I'm going to be using, or I might, as far as paint is concerned, I might be using some white gouache. I'm not sure whether I'll need that as an opaque, and this is nearly always being used by me anyway as highlights, so that may or may not be used. I'm using a 4B pencil, but a soft pencil anyway, to do a bit of drawing. The so-called modus operandi, the way that I'll be doing this is the way that I always do. I split the painting up into different stages, in fact, 4 different stages, and encourage you to paint along with me as I am painting, but there will be intervals in between each of the stages to give you a chance to catch up, ask questions, or if you have questions as I go along, please ask them, and Lois will direct them to me if I haven't heard them. And that will take us through. This particular session is slightly different from some of the others in that I'll still be doing the 4 different stages, but I'll be concentrating quite a bit on the first stage, which is drawing and composition, especially drawing, before I move on to the next 3 stages, which are laying down a wash, bringing in more colors and values, and finally finishing off any bits that need to be finished off. So I think in the marketing of this session, it's been pointed out that I'd be happy that you don't arrive with a drawing, because I'd actually like to do something on figure drawing here. I've chosen this subject because in some ways it's a relatively simple subject, but I think it will allow me to spend a bit more time on drawing before we go on and do the painting. In any case, what we do today is linked to my next and last online session in March, which is also two figures by the sea. A slightly more difficult painting, but each of them stand on their own. It doesn't matter whether you've done one or the other beforehand, but there is a link between these last two to do with figures on a beach. The first stage is about drawing, or more specifically, if I can just move these here for a moment, drawing and composition. I suppose you could make it 5 stages, and the first one could be thinking about the composition, but I tend to bring them all into one. And we're talking about drawing figures. So I'm hoping that over the next couple of hours, I can give you a number of tips that will help you with your drawing of figures. A lot of people find them quite tricky to draw, and are happier drawing things that aren't quite so emotional even as figures. So let's hope in a couple of hours' time you're feeling a little more confident, you've got a little more information. So to begin that process of looking at drawing figures, I'm going to show you a couple extracts from a couple of sketchbooks that I've kept. The first one is going to be what I've just done whilst I've been in Barbados, and I'll just show you some of the work that I've got in there, which I think is relevant. And the second one will be a sketchbook that I had on the day that I took these photographs, and you'll see a little bit that was going on in there. I really enjoy drawing figures. I enjoy almost. I look at it almost as if there is a narrative in each subject that I'm looking at. I mean, it can be a very, very simple narrative, and I'll point that out to you in a moment. But if the figure or figures are doing something in some way, other than standing stock still as a statue might do, then I'm interested in them. So let me show you a few pictures here. I'll move these two photographs for the moment out of the way, and I hope I've got them. So I've got a few pictures to show you, and this is from a sketchbook that I kept whilst I was in Barbados here just last couple of weeks. So when I talk about a narrative, here this lady is looking at her mobile phone. That is such a great, people who do that make great models for artists, because not only do they spend a long time on their phones, but also even if they put them back into their pocket, within 30-20 seconds they've got them out again, and they're looking at them again, often in exactly the same position. So this lady standing by a bus stop, I was able to sketch. I've sketched using a pen like this. I do quite a lot of that. One of these little permanent pens. I like something like a 0.8. I've sketched doing that, and then I have a little watercolor set. I have a little watercolor set that's contained in here, which I keep in my pocket, and then I add the paint if I've got time to. Otherwise, I'll do it when I get back home or at some other opportunity. So here are a few pictures, and hopefully you'll see what I mean by narrative. So this lady's looking at her mobile phone. This one here, if I can show it to you. Have you got it? Yeah, you got it. This one here is the people were so colorful in Barbados. It was wonderful. I think you can see that, Lois. She's just striding purposefully along the road. And I made a couple of attempts at her, and I got her fairly quickly on that one. So let me dig out. I've numbered these here to some order. Here is one of we had our apartment near a primary school, so quite a lot of the drawings I did were people going to school. This lady's got one child on her hip and the other one, the older one, striding off. They're both purposefully heading towards school. There's another sort of bus stop. I don't know. I don't know if I get a bad reputation hanging around the bus stops at schools, but it's I have to be a bit careful of that, I suppose. But she was looking down at her foot, just checking her foot out, and it was just a slight twist in her body. And the fact that she was doing that, there was some sort of a story linked with what she was doing. Where's my next one? Here's another schoolgirl, just turning around. It was quite hot out there, so the people would often stand in the shadows, but when a bit of light caught them, that was quite nice. Help me. Let's go back to this next one. Here we are. This is an extraordinary one. This lady, I did a drawing of her somewhere earlier on, and then I went back and did this back in my apartment. But she this is water she's carrying from a tap over the road from where she lives, because she has no running water. I met her later on. She has no running water, and she fills up her tank of water from the tap on the other side of the road. In fact, she takes her washing over the road and does it all there. So there was quite a lot of them and us, I found, in Barbados. Lots of wealth and lots of poverty. Here are two pictures. This is a European woman, a non dark Baduan woman, but I was just intrigued with her sucking through the straw on this drink that she had. So she was concentrating on that. And this lady, who I got quite friendly with, Natalie, she owned the fish stall. So she's very recognizable with those big white boots there. And I bought a tuna from her. She gave me the most fabulous recipe, Lois, of how to cook it. It was just amazing. Which I'll tell you about sometime. I'm sure you know, but it was it really tasted good. So we're coming to the end of this lot. Oh, here we are, a couple more. There's back on the beach. There's this lady again. She's back on her mobile phone, and again hanging around the school bus stop. This girl off to school. Two more. This was the first one I did when I got out there. The first morning I arrived, I went down to the beach, and this fellow was fishing for sardines. Really, I think he'd caught two. Oh God, I forgot, three very long fish there, which have long needlefish, they're called, and they had very long spouty noses. And he cut them off here because they're very sharp, and he was about to chuck them back into the water. Anyway, I did some sketches of him, and then when I got back home, made this drawing at the time. If possible, I always prefer to draw and then often take a photograph. And the last one I'm going to do was this little figure, tiny little one. I just hadn't got out of the bus. I just loved her sort of weary, like snail to school attitude, crawling away there. Right, so those are a few from this year, and one of the other things I think I'd like to mention before we get started is that they all have got some kind of movement within their body related to what they're doing. It often affects the position of their head or the way they're leaning or where their weight is. And as an artist, there are one or two things like that which are really useful to pick up on to help you draw. And when we do this drawing, I'll try and bring some of that out to you, and indeed as we go along in this session. And the last one I'd like to show you, which brings us to this subject matter, is the sketchbook that I had when I was at the Watermill last year. We were down at Vernazza on our day off, Wednesday day off. I'd chosen to go to the Cinque Terre ports, and I can't remember whether, I think it was before lunch or maybe after lunch. And I did a number of little drawings of people sitting down by the sea. In fact, this one here is the basis of what we're doing today. And I did that drawing, and then I had the opportunity to take a couple of photographs, which I am showing you here. And then there are a few drawings. These were all done waiting to catch the ferry that takes you from one of the ports to another. There was a lady sitting on the slabs there that I was drawing, and there she is again. All right, well, I've taken up some time on doing that, but this is so much about figures. I thought I'd show you that little lot there. And if anyone's got any questions on that, please do come back to me on that. So let's turn our attention now to these two here. And you might have worked out already that the practice painting I did here is a combination of these two photographs, and there's a reason for that, and I'll try and explain that to you. The point about what we're doing today, one of the points I'd like to bring out what we're doing today, is the focus of this painting is very much these two figures and what they're doing and where they are. And I'm going to try and put in as little as possible to tell that story, to tell the story of what they're doing and where they are. So if you look at the photographs, we've got quite a lot going on around, people sunbathing on the slabs and things like that. It's my intention to just tell the story, just to focus on the two girls a little bit as I did here. I mean, they could be anywhere. So I'm going to sort of put them into a seaside scene, but just to focus on that. And in fact, I think I'll try and make more of the figures and larger, if you like, and worry less about what's going on around here. I just need to do enough to tell the story. I use the word narrative. So there is a narrative here in that these girls are sketching. This girl here is looking at something off to the right, and she's sort of twisted her body a little bit to do that. And the other one is maybe concentrating on something different. And they're both lost in their activity, which is very understandable. Okay, so let's think about the composition. Well, I've spoke a bit about the composition, that I'm going to make quite a large statement of the figures and put in only enough to situate them by a beach. In fact, they're sitting on slabs of rock around Vernazza harbour, and all the way around in a big sort of semicircle, people are sunbathing and swimming and off the rocks here. There's a sort of slab pavement that you can walk your way around. Okay, so if I put those there, And I'm going to use that figure, the little figure, the smaller of the two figures, in my group, but I'm going to take that pose and put it next to that figure. Now, please feel free in your drawing and whatever you do to juggle with it just as you wish. If you want to stay with that, that's fine, but everything we'll do will help you. Okay, a few tips about getting your drawing right. This piece of paper is 11 inches by 15 or 28 by 38 centimeters roughly. And it's quite possible that I will end up cropping it a bit, depending on how my composition goes. Here's quite an important tip, I think. When you are drawing anything that you want, where you want to fit your subject in, whether it's a landscape, a still life, an urban scene, or anything of that nature, and what you're looking at, you want to get onto your piece of paper, your board, your canvas, or whatever. Always think about putting in the largest object first. In this case, let's come down to here. The largest of the objects is this girl on the right. She, from top to bottom, she is larger than this girl. I don't know whether she is really larger, but she's occupying more space on the in this scene. And so if I put in the largest thing first, I know that I can fit the smaller figure in. If I were to start off by drawing the smaller figure and drew that, and then went to the larger figure, I might find that I can't get her in. I can't get the top of her hat in, or something like that, because I do want to have some. I do want to have some sea showing above her like that. Now, this could be a landscape. You put in the big trees in the foreground, or you put in a big archway, and then other things fit into it. But here we go. And also, and then where I'll go from there is I'm going to kind of make some marks where I want the larger figure to fit in. So I'm going to do, let's have a look at my paper. I want to leave some area at the top so we can have the water scene, and I want to leave some area at the bottom where we've got some evidence of the slabs. So that's going to be the top and the bottom of my larger of the two figures. Right? Okay, and also because she's off to the right, I'm going to take this off to the right somewhere down there. Maybe bring it over, and then give some room here for the smaller figure. Okay, so that's a sort of compositional tip, really, in terms of making the drawing work. And then let's look at, because this is what I'm basing it on now. So let's just take this one down here for a little bit. She's twisting her head and looking upwards in that direction, whereas previously she's looking downwards. She's twisting her head and looking upwards, and that sort of skewers her body round. And I suspect she's drawn her knees up to her chest more, because that might be more comfortable. She's twisted around, and the general movement, if you can see what I'm doing with my pencil, is that we go like that, with the head, the spine, and we've lost what's happening down here, and then it goes around like that. So she's twisting around like that. She's not completely upright. So let's have a go. with what we're doing. I think this is the way that I'll draw. I just, the head is so important. So if we think she's going to be looking up that way a bit, maybe I'll twist her a bit more like that, and then her chin. She's going to be doing something, and her ear is there. So she's looking up there. There's no detail. I'm more, and then the hat can sort of fit in there. I've already gone slightly bigger than I thought I would, but it doesn't matter. And so we'll come back. Let's have a look at her body. Then she's got her shoulders pulled back, her right shoulder pulled back a little bit. So the angle is sort of like that angle of her shoulder. And then when you're drawing, I'm sure many of you know this, but it's a really big help to use negative spaces. Now, a negative space I'm defining here as under her chin. Can you see this shape here? And that shape gives me an idea of where I can position. It's going to be something like that. And when I draw, I'm using all the time, well, not so much imaginary, I draw them on a piece of paper, vertical lines and horizontal lines to help me get the proportions of where I know. So I'm interested where her shoulder drops away compared with her face. If I do a horizontal line up, it's about there. All right, so we're looking at something like that. We've got that shape, something like that, and then we've some sort of, it's like, it's not a tremendous, she's actually twisting around, but she's quite upright, really, having done that. It's going to be something like that. Let's just see if we put in there. So that's quite useful. I think we've got the position about right of her. And I'm looking at where her arm starts here. Let's take a horizontal line up. It's about there. And we go down, something like that. And again, I'm always negative space. Look, there's very little space here where her hand is away from her, and she's doing something here. She's really concentrating on that. So where have we got to here? We're getting, we've got something like that. It's difficult to see what's happening to her hip. I think it's going that way. And then she's seated here. I think what she's done, she's thrown some sort of a towel or something over her legs. I got it. So, and that leg goes up here, and I'm not quite sure. It sort of comes down like that. We don't see much of that. There's a towel there. That's good. That will save us a bit of drawing. And then her foot comes down here. Her leg comes down. We see something like that. And there she is. Now she's got her glasses on, so does that make it? I think that makes it. We're looking up her nose a little bit for what it's worth, because she's twisted herself. Although I'm above her, she's twisted, and then the line of her mouth. Okay, let's give her a hat now. However you want to give her. It's a wonderful hat. Say something like, what it does, it goes something like that. All right, how are we doing? There we are. I've got lots of pencil marks here, but I'll lose those later on. Big pair of sunglasses she's got. You can see them a bit on the other side. Something like that. Red band. And here. Practice. I put something, a bag or something, and I deliberately changed the color of it. We can worry about that later. Whereas in the picture, they've got their shoes. Right, let's look at the other person. Having drawn this here, we can do some more little imaginary lines. If we take a horizontal line to the top of her head and see where she's changed an angle, so I don't have to make that up. I think top of her head is going to be something like that, maybe a bit less, and she goes down to somewhere like that. That's where we see her. So she's going to fit into that sort of space. Okay, so we're getting there. There's a little thing. It doesn't matter. I'd like to have had more space out here compositionally, but maybe I'll cut it down a bit. All right, let's look at this lady, this girl, and what she's doing, and go back to these negative spaces I told you about. Look at this little shape here, and look at how close she is to that girl's shoulder. I know she's twisted her shoulder around a bit, so I'll and also she's very much looking down. Let's put her head. It's about that close. Let's put her head here. No, it's more like that. She's looking down. Nose is there. She's looking down. Something like that. Got hair. All right. All right. Let's see how that goes. I've got her. She's wearing glasses as well, but she's looking down. She's certainly concentrating on something else. Maybe I can get her looking down a bit more. And if you look at where the top of her shoulder is to her head, there's almost no space there at all, and it's right back here. So she's something like that. And her back is very much more bent than, it's sort of under strain almost. So it's like almost like that. I think. Have I made her too big? Possibly, we'll see. And her arm comes down here. Body's bent. Have I made her? I wonder if I've made her big enough. I don't think I have. No, I'm going to make her a little bit bigger. Or bring her down a bit. I'll bring her down a bit. So let's go back to her position. I've got her arms. Drawing is so much about sort of searching the whole time. You're searching for the right mark, and I often think it's quite a good idea to leave lots of these searching marks in. I don't know if I've done enough there. Let's bring her around here a little bit more. And Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. Oh, no, I'm not. She's good. Okay. I'll have to accept that. And, her ear, position of her ear is about there. Got her hair in a bun. She's looking down like that. Whereas she's looking like that, she's looking down like that. And okay. Still wonder if I made it too small, but I'm going to go. Yeah, I have made it too small. I'm going to make her bigger. Sorry, she's going to. She's got to be a bit big. Here we go. She's got a hand there. She's holding her book like that. This girl is holding her book much more like that. You know. And I'll put sort of this diagonal slab. Yeah. That's going to tell us something about what they're sitting on. There's something in that space there. And okay. I can use a lot of these lines as the painting goes on. So there are my two figures. I've got plenty of space. I think if I'm not going to do anything more to this, but I think I'd move them along this way a little bit, but I can achieve that by, I thought this paper was going to be a bit too big. I can achieve that by cropping up. I just wanted a bit more space here because she's looking out that way compositionally than all the space back here, because and focus very much on them. So that is an extended version of doing the drawing, the first stage of it. And if you end up rubbing it out one or two different times, that really doesn't matter. But hopefully I've got, I put, I'm going to put this box of some kind here, because that sort of hides what's going on. And yeah, I think, do I need to put anything else in? Glasses. There we go. I'm using my rubber just to clear some of the marks out of the way, but a lot of them will just get lost. And in any case, they're all searching marks. So I'm quite happy with them. They've got it here. She's, interesting enough, you may not see this in the photograph, but she's sort of twisting. I've shown it, maybe you can see it in my practice. Can you see it? Because she's twisting, I've emphasized these sorts of lines here a little bit, and that might help give the feeling that figure is twisting a little bit. Okay, that's as much drawing as I'm going to do, and we'll whiz through a little quicker than I normally do all the painting side of things, but hopefully you're able to get somewhere with that. I'm going to start walking my way into the second step here, which is probably the shortest one, but it's putting a wash in. Now, although I may end up cropping this a bit, I'll paint quite a bit of the area here. This is about putting your lightest colors in. So if I can refer back to my practice painting here, this is about putting, say, the very lightest colors of this background sea in, washing it in. It's about putting the lightest colors here on the pavements and there's rocks and everything, and the figures, and pretty much anything else. Where I want, if I want anything to stand out as being completely white, I'll leave it the paper. I mean, it might be an idea to, for instance, leave that bit of white paper on her sketchbook there. I'm really going to treat this sea area as simply so that when you look at it, you immediately think it's sea. I don't want to get involved in too much. I don't want to get involved in this sort of thing. And we remind you of the picture I showed you here. We're not going to get involved in looking, at what's happening with the water breaking up and all that sort of thing. Fascinating painting exercise as it is. I'm just trying to tell the story of two girls, quite simply here. The only bit I won't paint, I'll just leave that. Even if I put some color on that, I could damp it out with some kitchen towel, something of that nature. So the colors I'm going to put in first are, I'll do the sea area first, and it's going to be really just however you want to treat that. I'm going to sort of have it fairly green. So right, let's have a quick word on some of the colors here. I'm going to be making a bluey green, a very light turquoisey green. I do actually have turquoise here, but I'm going to make my own, I think. So I've quick run at some of the colors here. I've got a neutral tint, which is pretty black, but not totally black. I've got a burnt umber here and a burnt sienna. They're quite warm colors. And here I've got a raw sienna, which is a sort of light, warm, sort of yellowy color. Then I've got these two reds, a crimson and a Windsor red. But now you may well have paintings which are similar to these, and that's absolutely fine. The point about these two reds, for instance, is that this has got quite a lot of blue in it, which makes it seem a bit purple. And this has got quite a lot of yellow in it, which makes it seem more orangey. The point about all these colors is that they've all got lots of different colors in them, but that's another story. Then I've got three yellows. This one's a bit dirty. Let's clean it up a bit so you can see it. And they are a warm new gamboge, which is that one. Then a sort of mid-yellow, like cadmium yellow, but this is called Aurelian. And then a lemon yellow. As many of these colors as I can. They're all good quality artist colors, which I think is to be recommended as opposed to cheaper watercolors. But as many of them are translucent as I can, because a lot of watercolor painting involves putting one color over another and getting a sort of third effect coming out of it. Not all of it, but a lot of it. Traditionally it does anyway. And those are the yellows. And then I've got these three blues. This is cerulean, which is it's got a lot of yellow in it, makes it slightly green. And the other one over here is ultramarine, the French ultramarine, which has got quite a lot of red in it, which makes it slightly purpley. And then it's somewhere in between the two is this cobalt. And then here I've got a mauve. I don't use it that often, actually. Here I've got a turquoise. There's another one I don't use that often. And this sap green I use quite a bit. Whether I will use it today, I don't know. But I call it a convenience green because I often don't use it as it is, but I use it and add other colors to it. And over here, these last four, this is an orange, which I thought I was going to use a lot, but I don't use very much. This is a light red, quite a nice color, but very opaque. And here I've got yellow ochre and raw umber. Okay, well, all of those are listed by Lois in her information she sent you. And I will talk about them. If anyone's got any questions, do ask me. Okay, so people have different approaches to this. Some people like to wet their paper with a spray or something of that nature. I very rarely do that. I just like to slop a lot of paint on with my brush. And at this stage, we'll just see how that goes. So I'm going to go back now to mixing something pretty light, the lightest I've got for the sea. And I'm going to make some sort of a turquoise color. And I'll do that with a cool blue, which is cerulean. Hope you can see that. Let's just move that way a bit. Here's my cerulean. Okay, and that's quite a cool, and that almost would be enough, I think. I'll put a little bit of lemon with it, just a bit. Maybe that's too much. So it is. That's the sort of color I've got here, a bit more blue, and just added water, and I'll take that over all the sea area that I want. Now remember, when you put your watercolors down, they always appear darker at first and then they lighten up a bit. So I'll go around those figures here, around here. Just take that off her hat. I want to have that nice and warmer color there. Around here, leave her sketchbook out of it. And bring that between the two figures. What am I doing? Oh, yeah, just sort of go around there, just and come down here. And if you think that's going to be too strong, or often when the sea goes away from you, it becomes a bit darker. You can't see it really from these photographs, but I think in which case I'll just take some of that off there. I think a bit lighter water. Okay, that's fine. That's covered that area. I'm happy that it's, if you've left any little white bits in it, doesn't matter at all. That they'll get lossless. Oh, that's her hair. I'll leave that for her hair. And then I want to warm it up a little bit now, and that's going to be right. I'm going to change my water just to get rid of the green. And I'm going to bring in some warmth onto the figures and onto the stone. And the color I'll use for that is yellow ochre, but I could use raw sienna equally. I'd do that. And so I'm picking this yellow ochre color up here. This mop brush that I'm using is holding lots of water, and the sun is coming down and it's falling on these girls all over. So let's just, I know there's colors are going to change, the shadows are going to change. I know they've got darker clothes on and everything, but the point is that the sun, the warmth, her hands down here, all of this. So I'm putting in some really light colors here. If I want to make them any darker, I don't want to make them any darker, because the lighter they are, the more I can show the light. In fact, if anything, I'll dampen it down just a little bit. All right. And similarly, I'm going to do that.
So are you putting the yellow ochre over all of the figure, over both?
Yeah, I put it over everything except for, but very light, except for that little bit of the book I spoke about.
Oh, okay.
Okay. If in doubt, go light. You can always go darker light later, but the light that you use will be very useful to you later on. I mean, if I made this yellow or some color like that, that's fine, but I can do that later. It's just this little book here. I quite like the light that's catching that. But even that, if I put that over there, that wouldn't matter. But I think what I do is just damp it off with a rag. Okay, so you can see that the wash for this painting is very simple. I haven't brought in any colors of their skin, of their hats, of their clothing, of what's happening around them here, the shadows and the values and everything. I've just established the sea wash and the light that's coming onto the body, the figures, and the ground that they sit on. So you can see that that's relatively simple there. If there are little patches of light that you've left here, don't worry about it. It's not a problem. They may even work to your advantage. Who knows? That is the second stage of the painting. I think what I'll do, I'll do the sea first on this one. Now, it's always interesting when you take photographs of water, seawater, or even in a swimming pool and ripple it and water, what the photograph does when it stills things. But generally, here about these girls being at the sea, I'm leaving out the rocks and all the other things apart from what they're sitting on here. And I think that the one thing I'd say to you is that when it's up close, when you're up close to it, you're getting very different marks than when it goes away from you. When you're involving distance, things tend to flatten out, as they do with landscapes and all sorts of things. They tend to flatten out. So these marks that I'm going to make here will tend to flatten out a bit and even become a little bit darker back here. So I'm going to use this brush, which is a dagger, and it's sort of like a big fat rigger in a sense, but it holds water. This is squirrel. This happens to be a squirrel, and it's got, can you see, it's got this sort of shape, which allows me to, as you'll see, to make sort of fine arbitrary marks. Actually, it's an incredibly difficult brush to use if you want to create lots of fine lines. You're better off using a rigger or something like that. But it's the fact that you can get these arbitrary lines, marks, which you could sit there for a month of Sundays and try and paint them in. So I'm going to use it sort of in a flicky way, as you'll see. bringing the marks a bit closer as I go further away, and varying them as I come closer. The other thing I'm going to do at this stage is, and this is the sort of beauty of watercolor, is that I'm sure you know, but if I could just remind you that with working with watercolor, it is so much about the water. Watercolor, water first, then color. And to be aware of how much water is on your paper, is in your brush, and what's happening when you put your brush, which has got water in it, onto a paper which has got lots of water already into it, you could find you just got too much water. But what you're able to do is just gauge how much water is on the paper. And in this case, I'm going to sort of drop in some places some other colors, but they're going to be colors that don't have a lot of water. So if we look, for instance, at these two photographs and sort of look at what we can see even here, show up some of the rocks that are underneath, or some of whatever it might be. So you'll see me with this as I paint it is, for instance, I'll go to another color and I'll just add a little bit to it and let it paint itself. This is the great thing of watercolor. Okay, let's do it and hope that becomes something we know about. So I'm going to bring in a darker color. Oh, let's get rid of this. I'm going to bring in a darker color for all these sort of marks that I've been talking about, swirly marks within the sea. And here, I think I will. I use cerulean and a bit of lemon yellow here. I'm using this dagger brush and put that down here. Right, it's just got a little bit of this yellow I used before. That's fine, we'll lose that. That is there. Now, I could do that and add the covers too, but what am I going to get with marks like that? Then I'm getting marks like that. That's quite good, actually. I don't mind that. And yeah, I think actually that's pretty much it. So I'm pretty much using cerulean, I think. Maybe add a little bit of yellow ochre to it. Cerulean. Touch a little bit yellow ochre, maybe something just to change its stroke. And I'm going to paint. In fact, I'm going to stand up and do this. I'll make it easier. But I'm going to paint these sort of marks which are being made by the water being swirling around, and let's just bring them in like that. Okay, something like that. But they're going to be sort of fairly close as they go away, as they're more distant. And as I'm coming, I can do things like that when we get up close. But so now talking about being aware of how wet. It's still wet on my page here. Let's not go over the mats and things. So we're coming with that here. Mix up a bit more. A little bit of yellow ochre. Okay. But whilst we've got the distance here, I'd quite like just to slightly change the color of the distance here. This is all still wet. So I'll pick up a little bit of, a tiny little bit of ultramarine blue, say, and add maybe a bit of sienna. I don't want a lot of burnt sienna. I've just got, you could use cobalt or something. I've just got something a little bit darker, and I'll I'll touch that in for what's going to be my slightly more distant. That's a bit more ultramarine blue, bit of burnt sienna I've done here, because this is still a bit more, and I'll drop it in, and let's hope for the best. That right, let's come back to my what I've got here. We've got this. And of course, it's a lot less horizontal marks I'm making. A bit more of that. Okay, cerulean blue. A little bit of yellow ochre. If I get anything on the figures, I can wipe them off. I can always come back and add some more to that if I want to, but later on, let's see what we can get out of this slot. I'm conscious of how wet the paint is on the paper. That's, as I've said before, that's really quite important. And the shapes of, if you like, what I'm leaving behind are quite different down here. Now, what I'm going to do here is pick up a little bit of burnt sienna. I mentioned that I might do this here and drop. It wants to be almost pure paint, dry. What I mean is, and we'll drop one or two little bits in here and see how they will paint them. So we ask a lot of paint to produce the pictures for us. Just a few little marks here, and where it touches some of the wet we've put in. So I've used a sort of brown just to, I don't know, suggest there might be sort of rocks or something underneath. That's when you're wanting something to appear light, like the back of her neck here, or whatever it is, the top of her hat or something like that, that gives you, that helps because it's dark to make the light appear a bit lighter. So wherever I want to do that, I think I'll add a bit more around the hat just to that. I notice this is quite green, so I think I'll follow that on. Okay, just make these marks, just breaking it up. Each of your paintings is going to look different, of course, but that's the principle behind it. Let's see. So I've gone for this sort of slightly sludgy, churned up bit here to where it calms out and flattens out and gets a little bit more bluer back there. But using the original wash as the light parts of my water scene. Is that okay? Right. So, right. I'll move into the figures now. Now. We've been going an hour and a half, Lois, so that we're doing well. I know I've got 3 hours, but I try and aim for 2.5 if I can. We'll see. Okay, I'm probably going to move to my smaller wash brush here and leave the dagger behind. Probably don't need the dagger again, and maybe leave my larger wash bar. I'm going to a smaller mop brush here, and this is about bringing some colour into the rest of the painting. It's quite cool, this bit here, so hopefully the warmth that's on the bodies and on the pavement here will contrast nicely with what's been going on. So let's put a bit of red in that for some reason. Right, I've got I'll look at her here. I'm going to use some raw sienna here. I could use some yellow ochre, but I might add a little bit of, there's my raw sienna. I might add a little bit of yellow here, say gamboge or something. Just see what happens if we. Don't forget you've got something light there, so let's on the back of her head here. I'll just dampen out some of that to keep that lighter, and then using, let's try some burnt umber, just bring that down where it's on away from the light. Let's just see if that's going to be enough for the moment. Okay, and I'll take that down into her skin now. So I think I'll go for some yellow ochre for her skin and add maybe a bit of, just warm it up a little bit, or maybe a little bit of red. Just warm up her skin and put that down here. I'm not going to get involved in the shadows as such. I'm looking just at the color now, and but where I want there to be light on her. So I want this light to be on her back here, but I don't want that harsh line. So I'll just soften that out a little bit there, and maybe even there a little bit. And she's also got, what else can we see of her? Well, she's got her legs here. That's partially hidden behind her friend. What's she doing with her hand? Okay, that will do. That will do fine. Okay, it's the light that's on the back of her head that I'm interested in. The light that's on her back here. There's a little bit of light coming down here, and in fact, maybe she's got some light on that hand. Do I need to a little bit? So where I wanted to go lighter, right? So that's put in her body color using again the light wash that we put here, which now doesn't look as if it's anything at all. We can always bring in more color if we wanted to a little bit later on. And I'm going to do the same thing with her hat. Let's right, let's have a look at this one I'm looking at, isn't it? Right. Bring a bit more color. And it gets lost in her here. I'll also take this down in the area here where there's going to be more shadows. So I'm looking here at the color, but I'm also looking at where there might be some strong light. There's some strong light on her hat here. So just, you could use your finger. I often use a bit of let's just make that a little bit lighter and that a little bit lighter. And that. Okay. She's got blonde hair as well, so I can do the same. I'm going to pick up a bit of yellow and add that to it. And oh, that blonde hair is going to get lost in shadow anyway, but we've got some lighter bits there. Right, do I need to okay, so I'll go on to her skin color, pretty much same as the other one, although there's she's quite a lot in shadow. So I chose these two figures because I knew that the painting of them was going to be sort of relatively quicker than the drawing we did. Now I'm going to add a little bit, as I did before, a little bit of burnt, or maybe a little bit of that red. Oh, is that too much? We'll see. Maybe she's caught the sun a bit. So let's paint her in, go over her glasses because they're going to be darker. She's got a t-shirt on, isn't she, like that? Chin, put something there. It's all fairly flat because she's nearly in that's nearly all in shade. So I'm using occasionally the pointed bit of my little mop here where I think it's useful. Her hands there. We got her foot, her leg and her foot. I don't know if it catches any light, it might do. Just a bit, maybe just a little bit, catching a little light. And there's nothing else. Pick up a little bit of crimson here. I might just add a little bit of red to that. Just adding a little bit of red to her, and that I just thought I'd make her slightly redder than the other one. Okay. Let's carry on with these figures. We're getting somewhere with them at the moment. This hat band. Can we go for that now? I think that'd be all right. I've got my pointy end of the where's she got? With the pointy end of my mop brush. It's going to be in shadow, isn't it? So I'm not fussed too much about a little bit of splash of red there for a moment. And let's have a look at what's happening with their clothes. Now, you might see that, again, she's bending over, this girl. So there's a sort of tension, or the folds of the clothes are a little bit like, let's just see if we can emphasize that a bit. As I did with her there, that these, can you see that's because she's bending her body down, and that's because she's twisting her body. So I'm going to give her a black top, and so I'll go to this color neutral tint. Now, this is not black. It's a transparent, translucent color, which is quite good. And I when I use it, I often use it just to add to something, to make something darker. But I'm going to use it here. Okay, and I'm going to try and incorporate some of those folds that I was talking about. It all gets a bit dark here, just under her arm, where her breast is, and I'm going to and she disappears behind this little platform here. What's going on? This is quite dark. Now, it might be that I haven't made it dark enough that we can come down. I'm going to use my tissue there and I'm going to make it darker. So remember it's wet. I know it's all wet here. So let's bring in some stronger paint and just put that under here. And because the light is coming this way, I'll do something about that in a moment. Just so here I've used just the Payne's grey is not a dissimilar color, but it's a more opaque color here. So let's just I've taken the water out of my brush, and if I added too much water, it wouldn't help out. I'm do the strap on her back here, which is slightly under tension, isn't it? It's because of she's bending, so make it more under tension than I gave it, like that. And yeah, I'm just using my finger to soften the areas, the edges, I think. Yeah, maybe that's enough for that for the moment. We'll see how we feel about that. Okay. And with her, I'm going to use the colors that she's got, which is a sort of ultramarine. Blue, I said, there's got a bit of red and it's quite warm. And again, I want, she's got her back to the light as she has, but it's maybe there's more shadow on her. So let's see how we go with this. We'll put that's a little bit too light at the moment, but let's just look. Now I'm going to make that ultramarine blue a bit darker by adding a little bit of neutral tint to that. Let's make that a bit darker. So again, being aware of how much water is on the paper in my brush. That's all. I'm going to keep her clothes all pretty much blue. It is an important part of watercolor painting, just because it allows you to be in control. Just to what am I doing with her? Okay, just take it around what I've got here. Oh, I forgot to do parts of her skin. There, I'll come back to that. Okay, I'm going to make her clothes a bit darker. I'm going to bring in some more neutral tint, and let's whilst it's all in here, still wet, it's going to sort of paint itself a little bit. I've got these little lines with the paper still showing white. I don't want them to be as white as that, but I want to give the effect that there is a twist in the clothing. I'm leaving them white for a little bit. At some point, I'm going to bring a color over them, but again, I'm just waiting to see. I've dried off my brush. Let's put a bit of suggestion of some tension there for the moment. Well, whilst I'm doing that, I'll go back to her skin that I'd forgotten to do and put some of that in. Yellow ochre, a little bit of red, just dropped it in here. I think a bit of burnt sienna. That covers them there. The moment I think that's the two figures that I was I've got underway. Oh, there's some garment she's got here, so I'll stick with the same brown, same blue. So I'll put that. I'm deliberately trying to keep the painting of these two figures as simple as possible, just to emphasize that the extra time I spent on the drawing, and we're just focusing on what they're doing and where they are together. All right, let's leave that for a minute. I'm going to come back and deal with shadows shortly on that one. And now I do something about this before I go back and put the shadows in. We'll end up. I'm looking at the photograph. She looks as if she's done really a nice little drawing on that page, that girl. This photograph I'm here. I've been trying to look closely at what she's been drawing. I remember at the time looking and thought she was pretty good. There was some nice work she was doing. Okay, now these are slabs. In fact, what this is a pavement of some sort, and this is some sort of slab of stone they've got here. So I'll make this a bit browner, and this a little bit more pink, I think. Can you see I've done that in my practice here? I've just varied them a little bit. So this is a slightly more pinky, and this is, but they're both a hard surface, and also there's a suggestion of some sort of two tiles coming together and broken, something broken here. I just thought we'd break up the foreground surface a little bit, and that would make that fine. Right, now how shall I do that? Okay, I talked about this being slightly pinky here, so I'll pick up some raw sienna. It could be yellow ochre, and I'll put a drop of, I want it to be slightly pinky. I'll put a little bit of alizarin crimson in there. There's a sort of pinkiness to that. I'll need a bit more paint than that. Raw sienna I used, and a little bit of alizarin crimson. No, is that going to be all right? And there's nothing too precise I want here. I just want to get an idea of a textured surface, but this little shadow is quite nice. I like the way that creates a bit of interest in the foreground. So if I'm using my brush, this little mop brush, and I'm sort of like a child stabbing it a little bit along here, just to create a, let's go on up a bit, some sort of a texture. And I'm quite happy for it to be a little bit wet at the moment. Let's just come down here. Pop, pop, pop. You can see I'm just making these sort of textured marks, and I'll do it here. I'll vary that a little bit and just pick up something slightly grey and put that there just to change it. Now, this is all still a little bit wet, so I've got to decide. I want to make it a bit darker, and I've got to decide when I make it darker, because this is wet. I've spoken an awful lot about just being aware of where water is. If I touch that, I can feel that it's wet. If I'm going to put anything on it, I want it to be very dry. So if I pick up, say, something like this burnt sienna, and I'll add a little bit of something blue to it just to tone it down a bit, and I'm touching that in here, and this is almost completely dry paint, but it's using the water that is on the page already, just a little bit here. Just if I feel that it's not doing the job enough, I can damp it out, or I could bring in some water again. This bit happens to be a bit wetter here. And let's just change it a little bit. It's almost abstract painting here. I'm not over fussed about exactly what's happening. I think when I put the shadow in here, that's going to have a certain impact, and then I'll move down to what's going here and do something very similar with that. Let's put in a burnt umber, which is different from the raw umber that I've got here. This will bring it a bit closer. That's much bluer and cooler. The burnt umber that I've got here has got a little bit of red in it. So let's see what happens if I put that in. And I'm going to do something not dissimilar with using my brush, just showing you that you can do all sorts of things with any kind of brush. Let's just put that in there. That's I think I'll make that a bit browner, a little more of the burnt umber, and I'll put a touch of something blue. I'll put a touch of this cobalt in, just to take away too much of the warmth. Let's just see. Okay, I'll just put that on here. And here. However you want to put it on. I'm a combination of dabbing it on and just using brush strokes. Take it up to the figure. Up to the sea edge. Well, do I want to do anything more on that for the moment? I'm going to create a couple of light what way can I do that? I could use my finger, see if that's going to work. Just a couple of little marks. No. I'll use this tissue, just a little bit here, and just one or two light areas, because I can break that up with some shadows in a moment. So just to break it up, it's there's nothing critical about that. And I'm going to use a yellow for. I'll use this cadmium or Aurelian yellow, and I'm going to make it warmer. A little bit of this Aurelian, just make it slightly warmer. Yeah, and that I don't know, is a bag of some kind, but it's importantly it's a splash of yellow. It's got light shining on it, so let's just do that. And it's going to have a shadow at some point. Right, there we are. The last thing I'll do for this third step is to put some shadows down and establish that, and that will sort of get me 90% of the painting finished, and then we'll go from there. Now this is a little bit wet here, that's wet, but all of this is pretty dry. I'm not too fussed. I can go ahead and put some shadows in. I'm going to put a common shadow over everything, although I might vary the intensity of the shadow. And for that, I'm going to make it quite a blue shadow and use this cobalt blue. Remember, the shadow, because these colors are translucent or semi-translucent, the colors, the blue that we put on here will be going over, for instance, a sort of yellowy thing here, and over other colors, and that will affect how it actually looks. So my feeling is to keep the shadows cool, is to make the shadows as blue. If in doubt, make them a bit bluer. So let's pick up some of this cobalt. Now I don't want to put pure blue down. It would kind of work, but I'm not sure that I use it. So what I think I'll do is let's Whoa, that's gone to violets now. So let's bring the blue back. That was the red's always a very strong color and will change things, but it's taken it away from. Yeah, I think maybe this might do it here. I'll mix up a little bit more, so a little bit more water. And if I want to weaken the shadow, I can add water to it. If I want to strengthen it, I can add some more pigment to it. And just a splash. Oh, it was this one, wasn't it? Just a splash of that. Ooh. Let's see how that goes. Okay. I'm not going to do anything to the sea because I think we've made a statement on that. And I'm not quite sure what to do with that rock here. So I'll leave it and come back to it and see what's going on here. Now, if we look at the photographs, so we can bring this down here, this one down here. If we look at that, we've got the light coming strongly from the left and creating shadows down the sides of the girls. They've got cast shadows, and there are shadows in one or two other places as well. So, as I said, I'm going to use this common shadow color just to go over it and vary it if I need to do so. So let's put shadow down the side of her head, her hair. I've gone from using a flat mop brush here to using points, and if I can give some indication of this sort of texture of her hair by leaving little strands. I could even use my finger to take, it wasn't working, just to use the point of the brush a wee bit here. You might want to use a different brush, but I'm seeing if I can get away. You see, I'm just doing that just to suggest that there is hair there, which and a little bit like that. Okay, bunched up here, and then onto her face. Her whole face, most of it is in shadow. There's down here, and it's quite nice how we got this sweep. It's quite and that sweeps down there. She's in shadow here, and this come on down here. If you want to soften the shadow a bit, I think I might want to soften that a little bit. I can either do it with I'll do it with a little bit of tissue, just slightly soften it with a bit of tissue. And there's a shadow which is interestingly, which sort of comes from her strap, doesn't it, there? And we'll take that. Okay, no other shadows. I think that's right. Maybe a little bit on what's going on with her hand there. And then bring that down here. And that part of her thigh. And it's a cast shadow, isn't it, which is being chucked out. Do we need to? I'm going to take some of that shadow onto her clothing. Can you see those little white bits that I left there they're not so strongly white now because they're just, and going back, let's go to this lady here and her hat. Got a sort of dent in it, hasn't she? But that is quite soft. I'm trying to soften the edges. I can go back and use a bit of tissue. It's a sort of dent. And that is underneath her, the brim of the hat. And it's across her face. Let's put it all on and see if we want to take anything off in a moment. And it goes sort of like that, and she's pretty much in shadow, this lady. Let's see if that's going to work. That bit, we'll be coming back and adding a little bit here to try and give some more definition to her face. Something like that. And this also her hair, and then running out of this paint, and that is her hand. I haven't gone into too much detail with the hand. I'm in good company with Rembrandt because I find hands quite difficult, and so did he. I realized that after a long while looking at his paintings, how in so many of his paintings, Rembrandt this is, if you look at them, his hands are covered up. He puts people's hands into muffs and things like that. It's amazing. And then let's and then she's so these bits of her body, her heel and her feet, and there's a little bit of light catching something there. Right, I need some more paint. I've run out. And what I used was cobalt, wasn't it? I used cobalt and a little bit of this Windsor red, or this orangey red. I've got a feeling that's too much. Something like that. And I'm also going to take that around her clothing. Onto the cast shadow from her body. Now, if we do something like, I don't think the shadow is going to be strong enough, but I'll add to it and then something like that. I'm going to make that shadow a bit stronger, a little bit of cobalt and a tiny little bit of red, too much, and just add a bit of that there, and also on whatever this yellow thing is, a bag of some kind maybe. there. And I think I'll make this a bit darker. So one or two areas I'm going to darken up a wee bit. Just this area here, just let that just a bit. I'll make this darker as well. Moving down to this foreground, still not quite sure what to do about this bit at the bottom, but I know what I'll do. Just where I've got one or two little light patches there, I'm just adding a bit of shadow on the shadow side to them. No, don't worry about that. That's I think that's complicated. So I'm looking at this broken bit of paving here. Just as a slight interest. And maybe that's enough. Now, I'm not going to fuss this stage about what's going on with these two platforms. I think I'll leave it as it is at the moment. And oh yes, let's put a bit of shadow. I'll weaken it right off on this side of the page. And it is slightly cast, just helps to accentuate it. And she's also got her, maybe something a bit in shadow there. I've forgotten some shadow up here. This one on her hat. I was getting confused with her hat. Right. I think that it was quite a long stage, but that has taken us, what's the time? Yeah. Okay, that's taken us to the end of that stage. And I think the last stage is going to be quite quickly. We'll be able to finish that off. No trouble at all. Now, this is the fourth of the 4 stages. Remember, the first was composition and drawing, and we spent quite a long time on the drawing bit. Then wash, which in this case was very simple, and it often is very simple. And then putting in color and values and shadows, and that was the lengthiest. I mean, this one now is just adding any detail or accents that need to be brought in to help the painting work. And I don't think there's going to be a great deal we need to do with this. I did mention that one of the colors that one of the types of paint I might use at the start was this white gouache. I don't think I'm going to need that here. I don't think it's necessary. It's great for bringing in highlights and everything, but I don't think I need to do that. I mean, if you wanted to add more detail to the sea and bring in a little bit of frothiness or something in the way I showed you with this drawing here, then that's fine. But I've deliberately steered away from that and kept it much more simple. So in the main, I think what I'm going to be doing here is working some very dark colors, just to add little accents here. And for this, I'm going to bring out my rigger. Okay. It's probably work as it's still bent from the journey back from Barbados, but it'll work fine. And this is the cheapest. I don't know how old this brush is, and I keep mending it and adding bits of tape to it, but I can't bear to throw it away and use another one. So I'm going to. That's a bit too wet, I think. I'm going to use for this a dark sludgy color made out of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. I could use burnt umber, but I've got this sort of dark color. I don't want it to be too brown, so I'll add a bit more blue. But if I want to make it darker, I could always go back to my neutral tint. Just a matter of interest, how many colors have I used here? Neutral tint, burnt umber, burnt sienna. I use a raw sienna, that's 4. I use 5, 2 reds, 6, 7, 8 for that gamboge, 9 for the lemon, 10. I've used a lot of colors. It's more than I normally use. 10 for the cerulean, 11 for the cobalt, 12 for the ultramarine blue, and 13. Was that 13 for the yellow ochre? That's quite a lot of colors I've used. I mean, often the thing is done in about 7 or 8 colors. Anyway, that's a by the by. I've got a color here which is not strong enough. It needs to be stronger and darker. So I'll bring in some more ultramarine blue and some more burnt sienna and see how that does. Now, if it's in some areas it will be too strong, in others it won't. And here I'm making my way around just 1 or 2 little details that will be useful. So let's put in something here just to suggest her ear, and maybe a little bit on her hairline, just possibly. Just a little bit there. And so these are just literally just little accents which just help to bring the paint together. And now she's got some glasses here, so let's put those in. And she's looking down, so glasses are like that. Yeah. If in doubt, the less you put in, the better. Do I need to maybe just make something there on the shadow from her strap, just to emphasize that? Possibly a mark for when her arm comes away, and something here. Can I, maybe I could help with some of these folds in the clothing at this point. Just the twists that are going on. Do I need to do maybe? Yeah. That's the shadow on her left leg, and not much more to that. Let's have a look at this lady here. Well, let's start off with her sunglasses. I'm not going to completely make the glasses all, cover them all up, because it might even give an idea of there's a bit of a reflection going on here, but whatever. I'm not sure there is a little bit of her glasses and her ear. Just with the other one, something, a suggestion with the mouth a little bit. I mean, if in doubt, yeah, I'm going to make this area on the brim of our hat just a little stronger. So I put some of that color in, and and using a bit of water just to spread it around, again hoping it will do the painting for me. And let's come on down here. I think I can just add a bit of emphasis to the shadow here. So I'm using this sludgy color that I made here and putting it in, and where I think I want it to soften a little bit, I'm aware that this is wet, so if I drop a little bit in there, it will sort of paint itself. And then come on down to this bottom bit of our hat. There's quite a bit of shadow in here. Anything else? Give her a pencil and a little bit of a accent there. This all helps. A little mark just at the bottom of her foot, leading into the shadow, ever so tiny, and something to do with that. Here, when we get this bit of shadow of the broken tiles, I put in a touch of shadow there, but here I'm just bringing in maybe where it's much deeper in shadow. Can you see just 1 or 2 little marks? Helps to make it look as if it's something broken. I think that's it. I think that's it. That's it. That's finished. When it's dried, fully dried, I might get my eraser and take out 1 or 2 of these lines. But that's not critical.